Hi everybody. Welcome to week 8 of your art class. I started a project with you last week which was called the Autumn Leaf Crayon Resist project. And I kind of made it a little bit more challenging for the older grades. The younger grades did one leaf, and if you remember, we traced a leaf, found a nice leaf and traced it. We separated the background or the negative space into different sections, and I asked you to fill each section with a different pattern or shape or lines. Just fill in that negative space, those separate sections. Today what we're going to do is we're going to put the watercolor on top of the crayon, right on top of the crayon. And where the crayon is, because it's waxy, it will resist the watercolor and you'll still see your pretty pattern that you created. So you should all have some watercolor paints and a paintbrush. And just as a review of how to use them, what you do is you dip your brush inside the paint palette, and you have to add a little water to it and spread it around and around and around. And I'm going to show you a couple of different techniques that you can use. I'm going to do the leaf first. And the leaf I would like you to do in warm colors. Now, warm colors are the colors of the sun. That would be orange, yellow, red, all those warm tones. Now what I'm doing now is I'm putting wet paint on dry paper. So that is called the wet on dry technique. Wet paint on dry paper. And you can see that wherever the paint is applied, that it doesn't cover up your crayon marks because they are waxy. Now you can also do a wet on wet technique, which is where you wet the paper just with water, little section at a time. And get it wet. And then you put wet watercolor on it. Wet paint, that's wet on wet. And this is another way to do it. It kind of what we call it bleeds. The color bleeds. It spreads a little bit. And if you want to mix your colors, what I would suggest you do is mix them on your color palette. So you're going to wash your paintbrush off in between colors, like let's say I'm going to do yellow. And maybe I want to add a little bit of orange to that yellow. Rather than going right to the orange, you have a little spot here where you can mix your colors. You don't have to mix colors, but if you want to give it a little try, you see you can get another orange, a more yellowy orange. Okay, so you're going to paint in your leaf. Oh, I like that color. That's really pretty. Now you want to be careful that you don't make the paper so wet that it gets so soggy it gets a hole in it. Once you apply your color, you move on to another section. Oh, that's getting really pretty. I think I want to add a little red to it, so I'm going to clear off my brush. I'm going to dip it in the red, and I'm going to mix it in here. That's a beautiful warm color. And maybe I'll put a little red on the edges. Because the autumn leaves turn such a beautiful color. They're nice warm colors. Now that I'm finished with my leaf, I'm going to do my negative space. The leaf is the positive space, and I need a little more red in there. Oh, that red is beautiful. I love that beautiful red. And a little red on the veins. Got a little red down here. I kind of like the way that looks. Maybe a little more yellow. I think I like a little more yellow in there. I'm going to put a little yellow in here. And in here. It's kind of hard for me to see because I'm working from behind, but I want you to be able to see how I apply the paint. Okay, so there's my leaf. Now this part is all warm colors. Maybe, and you don't have to, but maybe you might like to use cool colors in your negative space or your background. Now for the cool colors, you should think of the ocean, which is blue, purples, and greens. So I'm going to do one section in this beautiful turquoise blue. Here I put some spirals. Maybe I'll put that over there. And I can do that section in this beautiful turquoise. Take your time. It's not a rush. Whoops. Don't want it to drip into my leaf. There's my beautiful blue section. You know what? I think I like the wet on dry technique the best for this kind of paper. If you have special watercolor paper, it kind of spreads a little bit more. You don't need special watercolor paper. You can use your regular bond or drawing paper. The part's blue. Now another cool color would be green. So I'm going to dip it in the water, swirl it around and around. Now I'm not digging it hard. I'm just gently swirling it around till I get a good consistency. And then I'm gently applying it. I'm not scrubbing back and forth because we're painting. We're not scrubbing. And use both sides of your paintbrush. This side and this side. This side and this side. Whoops, it's dripping because mine is standing vertically, so you got to grab those. You're going to be working flat, so that shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so you're going to go around all of your sections in various colors. You can mix the colors in here, or you can use them straight. Now, if you were an older grade, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, I asked you to please, let's see if I can get this one on there, to please do a cluster of leaves. So here I have my cluster that I did, and they overlap each other. So where they overlap, you won't see that line from the leaf underneath. Try to think of that when you're drawing them. Then I filled in all my backgrounds, and I'm going to start coloring them. Now some of these I can actually paint in my shapes. You can go around and do it like that. Of course, you would color your leaf first, and then you would do your background shapes. Another thing that's kind of fun to do is to take a tissue. If your colors are getting a little too thick, I kind of like the way that dripped there. I'm going to leave that. That looks really pretty. But if you find it's getting too wet and it's starting to drip all over the place, you can get a special effect by taking a tissue, and while it's wet, that one's not wet enough yet. Let's see. Let me do one here. Let me do my big orange leaf. I'm going to do my big orange leaf. Let's pretend I filled the whole thing in. It's nice and wet. You can take a tissue and you can blot some of that paint up. That's just if it gets too wet. You're certainly welcome to do that. Look at how pretty the way it dripped like that. It got nice and vibrant green, a brilliant green on the bottom. So I want you to have some fun with this. You can color in your various shapes with crayon and then go over it with paints. Like you could even put blue on top of red. And you'll see how it resists the color. The paint looks kind of pretty. So you'll start by doing your leaf and feel free to mix the colors. But of course you're going to mix them in on the top of on this part of your palette. Don't mix these colors because once they get all mixed together, it just gets all muddy and it's really not very easy to use them then. So this is where you'll mix your colors. And then at the end, you can wipe that off with a tissue. Comes right off, so you'll be all ready for next time. You could even dip it in some water if you want. Okay, so be sure you show me how you made out on Flipgrid. And remember, the younger grades just did the one leaf. The older grades, I'd like you to challenge yourself and on a larger sheet of paper, do a cluster. And if you don't finish it in 1 week, that's okay. We can work on it again the next week. I want you to take your time. Now this is week 8. Week 7, we did the crayon part. Week 8 and possibly week 9, we're going to use to paint it. Okay, so have fun with this. Be very deliberate with the way you paint. Think about the colors that you're choosing. Think about how you're mixing your colors. Think about your color scheme, perhaps warm and cool, or you don't have to. You could come up with any color scheme you like. You might like to do all cool. You might like to do all warm. You might like to do all primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. You might like to do, I don't know, figure something, a color scheme out that you might like, okay? And show me on Flipgrid, all right? So I look forward to seeing your work. And of course, you know that when you're in person in class, you don't have to show me your Flipgrid because I'm going to see your work when you come to class. So have a beautiful week, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye.